Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're looking into the Bitcoin SV ecosystem. You shared some really interesting material.
Yeah, definitely. We've got analyses on the projects running on it, transaction activity, and this MNE stablecoin.
Right, so the goal is basically to get a handle on where BSV is at, right now, and maybe where it's heading.
Exactly. And one of the first things that probably jumps out at you is just the sheer number of projects they claim are running on BSV.
Uh-huh. Like what kind of stuff?
Well, everything from social media, NFT markets, enterprise solutions, even games.
Okay.
The BSV Association lists them, but the numbers kind of vary. You see counts like, I don't know, 77, sometimes over 400, maybe even more if you count others.
And they're all trying to use BSV's scalability, micropayments.
Yeah, pretty much. That's the pitch, right? High
Yeah.
transaction volume, super low fees for micropayments, and data integrity.
Okay, so for anyone listening, that sounds like a pretty busy ecosystem on paper.
It does.
But is it? Like, are these projects getting real traction? The analysis you sent sort of hinted that maybe the list doesn't quite line up with actual on-chain activity.
That's a really good point, and it's something you should definitely keep in mind. While the directories look impressive when you dig into the transaction data, well, it often looks like a huge chunk of the activity, especially those big peaks, might just be from a handful of applications, or maybe even just testing.
Right, so it raises that question, like, how many real users do these hundreds of projects actually have?
Exactly. That's the key question you'd be asking.
Now, something else that caught my eye was this MNEE stablecoin. It runs on Ethereum and BSV.
Dual chain.
Heck yeah.
But the BSV side is interesting because it uses this first sat ordinals protocol.
First set ordinals. Okay, what's the big deal there? What does that let you do?
So what's kind of cool about that, for you to understand, is that BSV can handle transactions right down to 1 Satoshi, the smallest possible unit.
Okay.
So MNEE on BSV using this protocol can have incredibly low fees, like fractions of a penny. Wow, okay.
Plus, unlike Ethereum, you don't need a separate token just to pay for gas, you know? And it's fast.
So the idea is everyday payments, microtransactions.
Pretty much. That and international transfers, they seem to be looking particularly at Latin America, and they're making a point about being regulatory compliant.
Gotcha. So for you listening, this could be a practical option if you're actually using BSV.
Potentially, yeah.
Let's talk about those network transactions then. The analysis mentions some really massive spikes. Didn't you say something like 85, 90 million transactions in a single day?
Yeah, those numbers are definitely eye-popping. It sounds like a huge amount of activity for you to think about.
It really does.
But connecting back to what we said earlier, the analysis suggests this activity can be pretty volatile,
Meaning,
meaning those huge peaks are likely driven by just a few specific things, maybe one app going hard, or like I said, testing. It's not necessarily broad-based usage across the whole ecosystem.
okay, so tracing that activity back to specific projects is probably tricky then. It can be. Tools like What's On Chain help. They try to tag transactions and figure out where they're coming from, but it's still a challenge for you to get a perfectly clear picture.
Right. So impressive peaks, but maybe concentrated. Now, looking ahead, Terranode, you highlighted that, aiming for over 1 million transactions per second.
Yeah, Terranode is basically their next generation architecture. It's a massive ambition.
1 million TPS.
Yeah.
That's a serious jump from the current peaks, even the high ones.
Oh, absolutely. It's a whole different scale.
Yeah.
And alongside that, they're also working on standardizing developer tools, which is important, right? To make it easier for people to actually build stuff on BSV.
That makes sense. Easier tools might attract more developers.
Hopefully, yeah. That's the idea.
Okay, so to kind of recap for everyone listening, we've got this picture of potentially many projects, but the activity seems maybe focused on a few. We have the MNEE stablecoin using that first sat ordinals thing on BSV for potentially super cheap, fast payments.
Right, with a focus on compliance in specific regions.
And these huge transaction volume peaks, but again, maybe driven by specific applications or testing, not necessarily widespread use just yet.
Exactly. And that really underlines why Terranode is so critical for them.
You think so?
Well, yeah. If they want to achieve that vision of massive scale and attract big enterprise users, Terranode has to work as planned. That leap from, say, 90 million a day to potentially 1 million per second, that shows you the scale of the challenge and the ambition.
Got it. And MNEE, its potential seems tied to adoption. right? Being on two chains is interesting. The low BSV fees are cool. SMS payments even.
Yeah, the SMS thing through text BSV, that's a neat integration. It could lower the barrier to entry, but you're right, it's still early days for MNEE. Its market cap is currently quite low. It needs way more people actually using it for you to see a real impact.
So that dual chain strategy lets it exist in the Ethereum world while trying to build out its niche on BSV for those small, fast payments.
Precisely. Best of both worlds, potentially.
And finally, looping back to those big transaction numbers. It's a reminder for you, the listener, right? Look past the headline number and try to understand what's actually driving network activity.
Definitely. And that's where explorers like what's on-chain become really important tools for you to keep watching. Distinguishing between, say, data uploads, token transfers, or just stress testing is key.
Okay, so here's a final thought maybe for you to ponder.
Yeah.
What if a blockchain could reliably handle, say, 1 million transactions per second instantly and for next to nothing?
Yeah, imagine that.
What kind of completely new things become possible? New business models, new ways to interact online. If that technical promise is ever fully delivered and, widely adopted, how might that change things for you?
It's a big question. How might you interact with data and value differently online in that world? Definitely something to think about.